I have here a space rock. This is an asteroid that fell to Earth in 2017. And my job is to find objects like this when they're far away from us in space so that we don't accidentally get hit by one that we don't know about.
Every 11 seconds, we look for anything that moves against the background stars. If we see something that moves, we suspect it could be a candidate asteroid or comet. And so we go chase it down and figure out exactly what it is. A near-Earth object can be any asteroid or comet that gets within about 30% or more of the distance between the Earth and the Sun. The asteroids tend to be more rocky. Sometimes they can even be solid slabs of metal, more or less, whereas the comets tend to be more of a mixture of ices and rocks, all mangled together.
The Planetary Defense Coordination Office? Is that a real place?
That really is a real thing. The job of this Planetary Defense Coordination Office is to basically coordinate all the activities that NASA has to search for the objects that can get close to the Earth, to make detailed predictions of their orbits and their trajectories, and also to coordinate with other governments around the world and other observers all over the place to try to keep an eye out for what is going on in the skies. Lucky for us, it is really, really, really unlikely that any sort of gigundous impact would happen, something that's capable of, wiping out a large fraction of life on Earth. We know where more than 90% of all the really large near-Earth asteroids are. These are objects that are larger than a kilometer across, so things big enough to cause really, truly global devastation. And none of them pose any impact hazard over the next 100 years. So that's great. But when we get down to smaller sizes, down to sizes of objects that are big enough to cause what I would call severe regional destruction, and no, the news is not as rosy. We have found maybe between 30 and 40% of those objects, and the rest are still out there waiting for us to find them. When we get down to really small sizes, things say capable of causing damage to a city, there we only know of a few percent of the objects at best. So we still have a lot of work to do to map out what is out there in the skies. In 2013, there was an asteroid that exploded over Russia. And this was a very tiny asteroid, actually. It was only about 17 to 20 meters across. So that's about the size of a small house. It's not even a particularly big object. But it exploded high up in the Earth's atmosphere, and the shockwave broke a lot of windows, and it sent about 1,600 people to the hospital, mostly from flying broken glass. We have to find them far enough in advance, because if we don't have much warning, then there's a lot less you can do about it. But if we find these objects when they're years to decades away from any potential close approaches, now our option space opens up quite a bit. The simplest thing we could try is to simply bump a spacecraft into an asteroid, and we call that a kinetic impactor. NASA's DART mission, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, is supposed to test that kinetic impactor technology by just bumping into an asteroid and just changing its orbit ever so slightly. You can have other techniques that are more complicated, such as just parking a really big spacecraft next to an asteroid and then just kind of let the force of gravity pull it aside. That takes a long time, though, and the object can't be too big. If the object is very large, or if we just don't have a lot of time, then the only option becomes to use some sort of nuclear device. Obviously, that is a last resort, and we'd really like to find the objects far enough in advance that we can use simpler and less invasive techniques like the kinetic impactor technique. Asteroid and comet impacts are really unlikely, so the probability is very low that something will happen, but the consequences can be high. And that to us in the spacecraft world means it's sort of a medium risk. You don't need to run around with your hair on fire, but you don't want to completely ignore the problem either. On the other hand, we have climate change. The probability of it happening is extremely high, and the consequences are high. That means this is a very, very risky thing that's happening to our planet. It's really urgent. We need to take steps now so that we can avert the worst possible consequences.